Welcome back, bow hunters. This is Ron with Stay Sharp Guide. In this sharpening evaluation and sharpening video, we're going to be looking at the brand new, just came out DXB Broadhead, their Big Game 3, which claims to be the world's largest fixed blade broadhead. This thing is huge, so I bought a 3-pack. I've got one head out and it's assembled. Here it is. That is a massive broadhead. If you want to compare it, here is a tooth of the arrow, a slick trick, another popular 3-blade head. Here it is next to a Magnus 4-blade. This is a ginormous head. It has a big cut. What it features is a massive tip. When you look at just the tip itself is about as big as the slick trick head. A jumbo chunk of hardened steel that runs all the way through and is part of the ferrule. And the blades are unique in that this is their form. Massive 0625 thick tool steel. That is a very thick blade. Single bevel, so it will afford a little bit of rotation as it's passing through the animal. But that is a lot of broadhead, 300 grains with a massive cut. So we're going to look at the edge, as we do always, the edge under the microscope and on the best certified sharpness meter. But I can tell you right now, there's a sharp edge here. They must care about the edges that they produce, because I can tell, I can feel that it's very sharp. So let's look at it under the microscope and on the sharpness tester, and then we'll come back and talk about how on earth are we going to sharpen a blade that has this shape to it. So I will be back. Clearly DXB Broadheads cares about the edge that they ship. That's one of the better edges out of the box that I've seen. That is a great edge, as you can see by that white line. So they do an initial grind, and then they do a finished hone on the edge that you saw in the microscope. So that was a good grind. Let's see how it fares on the sharpness meter. .207. That's pretty good for an out-of-the-box sharpness. That is very good. But as I say always, out-of-the-box sharpness is simply a snapshot in time. As soon as you take them out of the box, put them together, and practice with them, you started to dull them. Certainly when you shoot an animal, you've dulled it. So then you own the re-honing of it. And that's what we're going to talk about next, is how to get these sharp again. As beefy and thick as this big single bevel blade is, there is going to be some life there worthy of resharpening. So let's look at that next. Well, after looking the blade over, it appears that there are really two options of Stay Sharp guides by which to sharpen this blade. One is our 35-degree guide with 26 inches of blue painter's tape on it, because we have to match that factory edge. So the green 35-degree guide with tape on the roller would do that. That is one option. And in this case, the goal is to keep the edge parallel with the roller. The other option would be our type C guide in the topmost position, and there too we can meet the factory edge. There you would request a square dowel. We ship the round dowel with all the C guides, but on our website we say if you're going to be doing a convex or straight head, just ask for the square dowel. We'll throw that in as well. The highest position, and that will sharpen it as well. For this video, I am going to focus on sharpening it with the 35-degree guide and the tape on the roller. So I will come back and discuss that process next. In order to sharpen the Big Game 3 head with the 35-degree guide, as I mentioned, you want 25 or 26 inches of tape and the blade in this orientation. Because the blade is not continuous, it's open, you need to grab it in the jaws by a little bit by the tip, but mainly by this back part. So this is the placement that you will want. The key thing to remember is that this edge is parallel with the roller, and then the next step is to mark up the edge with a Sharpie marker, and that will tell you whether you have the blade in the jaws correctly. Based on marker wear, you will see if placement is proper. Now, this is a new head. On our website we sell either the diamond plates in these 5 grits, 240 to 2500, or our wet dry sandpaper in the same 5 grits. I'm going to go ahead and use the diamond plates. Now, this head proved to be pretty darn sharp out of the box, so I won't need 240 and 400. I will start with the 800 grit plate, and once you have the Sharpie marker on there, just give it a couple of light rolls to see that you have the blade properly placed. In this case, I do. I'm getting wear all the way across. So I'm going to go ahead and sharpen this with the 800 grit plate until we get a burr. And then we will employ our little piece of Post-it note, and we will talk about the burr and burr breaking next. Alrighty, so I've been going at it on 800 grit now for a while. This, I can tell you for certain, is a hard tool steel. I've been sharpening blades long enough to know when I meet hard steel, and this is some good hard steel. But the key is to establish whether I've achieved a burr. So a little piece of Post-it note cut about 1/4 inch wide, slide it on the back side. This is a single bevel, so we're only sharpening the one side. And if I hang up on a burr, I know I've done all the sharpening now that I need to on this edge. There's a burr here that I can feel. Now that I've got a burr with 800 grit, I need to break off that burr. So you would hang it off the edge, tip it flat till you've trapped it, and give it a few light strokes. It's going to sound kind of crunchy to begin with because you're breaking off that burr. You want to keep it nice and flat. You do not want to introduce any bevel to the back side of a single bevel. And the goal is simply to break off the burr. You want to leave none of the burr on this edge before I go off to the next grit, which in this case will be 1200 grit. And you will see I'm wearing and eroding the edge. Let's check to see that I got rid of it all. I do not hang up on any sort of a burr. The burr is gone. Take a couple insurance swipes here to make sure of it. I want there to be no burr whatsoever. Alright, now that I've got my 800 grit edge, I'm going to switch to 1200 grit, but before I do that, always clean off the debris from the higher grit or the lower grit. In this case, I was using 800 grit. I don't want any of that 800 grit debris, any loose granules, to get onto the 1200 grit plate. Give that a couple of taps. I want to make sure that I'm only working with 1200 grit here. If a couple of granules of 800 grit get on here, you'll hear it, you'll feel it. Brush the plate clean, but I'm going to now sharpen it at 1200 grit, and then I will come back and break the burr off with this grit. Alright, let's check our progress at 1200 grit to see if we've achieved a burr. Yes, we have. The paper catches on that burr, flexes and bends, and then jumps over it. We have achieved a 1200 grit burr. Now the process is to break off 1200 grit. So we will again trap the blade flat. Light strokes. The burr at 1200 grit is very small. Again, you're just laying it on here, trapping it flat, and then a light pressure stroke. Again, you just want to trap it flat and light pressure. There is no need to push down hard. The fastest way to wreck a diamond plate or wet dry sandpaper is to push down hard. The burr is very tiny, especially with good hard steel like this. The burr is pretty small. Alright, let's look at the back side. As you can see, we're polishing it up pretty good. Now they've got like a gun bluing, a black oxide on here. Because you've exposed this, you're going to end up oiling the blade anyway, so don't worry about exposing that. Oil all of this blade. It's good quality tool steel, carbon steel. Make sure that it doesn't rust after you've gone all through all this work. When you sharpen on a diamond plate or wet dry sandpaper, the fastest way to wreck them is to push down hard. If you push down with a great deal of force, you can dislodge the granules from the plate or the sandpaper. When you roll, your weight is near nothing. Your hand is only meant to steer you. Do not push down hard. It's almost as if you're barely trying to make contact. You're almost lifting it off. You'll feel the diamond plates doing their work. If you push down hard, you just wreck the diamond plates. So light pressure is all you need when it comes to sharpening. Let the diamonds, let the sandpaper do their work. Pushing down hard does not get you done any quicker, but it does destroy your plates. Now that I've done a little bit more on this side, I'm going to make sure I got rid of all the burr. So again, trap it flat. Light pressure stroke. You want no burr left behind. Alright, the next step would be to clean off the guide and the blade. Make sure that there's no remnants of 1200 grit on there. And now we're going to go to 2500 grit next. We will sharpen here until we get a burr, and then I will come back and explain it further. Alrighty, so we've been sharpening on this edge for a while, and let's see if we've got our burr at 2500 grit. Paper flexes, we catch on the burr, and then it jumps off, which means it's time to break off the 2500 grit burr with the 2500 grit plate. So a single bevel, which is what this is very much like a wood chisel. You have a bevel on one side and a perfectly flat plane on the other side. Where they meet is your cutting edge. So you want to keep that relationship of bevel to flat. You do not want a bevel on the back side. Don't make that mistake. Alright, let's see if we've gotten rid of it all. I believe we have. Yes. Now, when you get to 2500 grit, to ensure there is no burr left, give it a couple more strokes on the bevel side, because you've moved the burr to the bevel side when you broke it off on the flat side. If there was some left, you pushed it over. Now we're going to come back, make sure we've gotten rid of it on the flat side, and you are producing a 2500 grit finish on the back side. Just because it's a single bevel doesn't mean you don't own two edges. You do. So we're going to do 2500 grit on the back side and on the front. And the burr is like a paper clip. You can only bend it so many times before it breaks off. So we're going to do this a few times. We're going to create a burr on the back side, break it off on the back side. Now we're going to push that burr to the bevel side until it breaks. This step ensures that you've got rid of 100% of the burr. You want none of the burr left. Now we've got a nice smooth burr-free edge on the flat side and on the bevel side, and we're producing a pretty darn good edge here. So the next step will be buffing compound, and I will come back when I have that all set up. The next step in the sharpening process is buffing. Now I've tested buffing compound edges that were buffed on leather, wood, denim, cardboard, and cardboard is my preferred favorite. It can be cereal box cardboard. This happens to be blueberry muffin mix cardboard. The edge that it produces doesn't matter what the backing is. Doesn't matter if it's leather, wood, denim, or cardboard. All of them produce the same sort of edge. So you'll take your buffing compound and you'll color up the strop, and you're only depositing a wax layer and a abrasive grit that's suspended in the wax. That's what this crayon is. And then you're going to use only a backward stroke, lift and stroke. You're only going to be going in a backwards motion, and you can do this all you want. You're not removing that much material, but you are going to produce a scalpel's edge, a mirror edge on the blade. Now in the little bit of time that I've been buffing, you can see that that white buffing compound is turning black. If you were doing this on a leather strop, eventually that would be gummed up and you would be forced to clean the leather strop. In this case, I can just throw this panel of cardboard away and start with a new one. While you're buffing, you will get some buildup on the back edge here. You can just strike that off with your fingernail and continue the buffing process. When you're buffing a single bevel, you want to buff all the way out to the edge. Lay the cardboard on something like a diamond plate, a piece of plexiglass, a piece of mirror, and like we did with the diamond plates, you are going to remove that little burr. The burr that buffing compound produces is pretty minor, but you definitely want to get rid of that burr as well. And you can see how we're darkening it up. We're taking off some metal. So do that process, then come back, buff it again, and keep repeating that backward and forward on the bevel side, on the flat side, on the bevel side, on the flat side, making sure you get rid of all of that burr. You want no burr at all. That will mimic dullness. It'll give you poor results under the microscope, on the sharpness meter, and on the animals that you shoot. That burr is not your friend, so you need to get it, and then you need to get rid of it. So I'm going to keep going with this process, and then we are going to look at it under the microscope. Our edge was very good looking under the microscope, but the test is, how does it perform in the sharpness meter? "91. That is a sharp edge, no doubt about it. That turned out to be very good. Now, this steel is incredibly thick and durable. If you want to see how this head performs in a test, I'm going to link a video that John Lusk did, Lusk Archery Adventures. He tested this broadhead into wood and ballistic gel and 22 gauge steel and even into a cinder block, and the results were amazing as to how this head stood up. So I'll link the video, make sure to check that out. But I can tell you right now, their blades are a good steel, a very hard steel, a tool steel, worthy of resharpening. The tip and the ferrule are also some great steel. And as you can see, we got it very sharp. So this is not the sort of blade that you would throw away after a single use. This one certainly deserves a honing to bring it back to life after you've killed an animal with it. But that is the Big Game 3, the world's largest fixed blade broadhead at 300 grains. That is the sharpening of this head using our 35-degree guide. So thanks for watching.